Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. today. Thrilled to have you guys with us. Could not do it without you. We love you. We value you. We appreciate you oh so very much. I want to wish a belated happy birthday as well. I know we mentioned this yesterday, but I want to do it again today to my old man who turned the tender age of 37 yesterday. At least that's what he would want me to say. If my old man said he was 37, Diesel, how old is he actually?
73.
73. That's exactly right. Diesel doesn't even know the ruse, and he still got it right.
Can't get anything past me.
Papa Ryan, happy birthday. We love you so very much. And, guys, whenever you like something I do, okay, give me credit. Whenever you're upset at something I do, please blame my dad. Okay, please blame my dad. That's how we'll look at it here on Offsides, the Fan Upstate, jam-packed on a Friday edition of the show. Coming up, in 18 of the last 20 seasons, this happened in the NFL. So who's the one to do it this year? We've got A, B, C, D, and F scenarios for Clemson and South Carolina football in 2024. We have got Heisman Trophy voter Brent Beard. We have got a sit-down with former Super Bowl quarterback Cordell Stewart. We've got Cole Bryson on a bunch of SCHSL BS. Is that enough alphabet soup for you for one sentence? We have an I Read the Articles draft, which we'll explain at 5:40 p.m. today. We've got the top 5 at 5, and we have you here on the most interactive sports radio show anywhere. 844-FAN-PHONE, FANFONE, on the Renewal by Anderson fan phone, and the text line is there for you at 71307. Hello to all you pretty people and the YouTube verse today, watching Diesel and I on YouTube right now. Great to see you. Great to be with you. It always is, my friends. It always is. So let us open with this. I like, right, to be affiliated when it comes to like matters, key matters, important decisions in sport. I like to be affiliated with smart people. Okay. Like I like to hear what smart people have to say. And when we learn the most, right, I think is when two smart people on opposite sides of a debate each other, because both are ready for the other person's punches and counter punches, etc. Right. So to me, in this case, you've got a lot of back and forth in terms of college football and health of the sport and what is really going on. And, this particular person, David Hale, Diesel, was the guy that Paul Feinbaum was on with when he said there's no way in hell that this sports talk show host in Greenville, South Carolina, knows that Clemson and Florida State are trying to get out of the league. And he said that about 2 years ago. He was on David Hale's show. David Hale has taken a couple of swings at me in the past, couple debate swings, no big deal. Then I sat next to him for Clemson, Florida State this year. And he and I had a great conversation, talked about this, that, and the other thing, and shook hands. And, I don't know, I felt really good about it after that. So David Hale came out today, guys, and said the following, because yesterday we got floated, to me, some massive BS that we might never even have a 12-team college football playoff, that this thing might expand to 14 teams before it ever was 12. These greedy punks can't even stop themselves from sticking their filthy paws in your silky drawers to get money out of your wallet. A David Hale joint on Twitter said the following: I'm largely in favor of playoff expansion, at least up from 4. But 12 has issues, and 14 plus with multiple conference auto bids has big issues for me. Let me explain. Diesel, I think there's some great points here. He says, here's Penn State's 2023 schedule with pregame FBS win expectancy. And what you see is there's only 2 games on there where they're 50% or below to win, at Ohio State versus Michigan. He said Penn State played 12 regular season games. In 10 of them, they had a win expectancy of 83% or better. Penn State won all of those games. Penn State basically played 2 games in which they weren't the heavy favorites and lost both. In the 12-team model, Penn State would have almost certainly been in, though I think there would have been room for Oklahoma or Arizona. In a model in which the Big Ten gets 3 or 4 teams automatically, they're in with ease. He said the reason a larger playoff works in the NFL is because virtually every game is somewhere in the 60-40 outcome range, unless it's the Carolina Panthers. Then they have no chance. But every other game is 60% to 40%. In college football, more than half of almost every team's games are clear blowouts. Many teams will play what amounts to a 3 to 4 game schedule and only need to win 1 to make the playoff. Only need to win 1. Now, as Big Ten and the SEC get bigger, they realize 12-0, 11-1, 10-2 become tougher marks to reach. So they want guarantees that teams won't be punished for going 8-4. And there's a case that 8-4 in the SEC could be better than 11-1 in the Big 12 or the ACC. But that's a case that deserves a debate, not a rubber stamp. You don't get a guarantee that your 8-4 team gets in. He says this is all probably yelling into the wind. The game is over. The Big Ten, SEC have won. We're just deciding margin of victory now. But at an era when MLB, NBA, and NFL are dying to engineer meaning in the regular season, I think college football is going down a bad path. Diesel, you've been in favor of playoff expansion. I've been on the fence. Can you at least agree that we should cut the crap and it should not expand anymore?
Yeah, and I know this piece of audio that we're about to play because I listened to it myself this morning. And generally speaking, I agree with Josh in that playoff expansion for the sake of playoff expansion is not always great. I don't love auto bids, but I also don't love a system where they can exclude half of the league, half of the sport. Like, how can wins against certain teams count if you refuse to ever put them in the playoff? Right? So there has to be a vehicle. There has to be a vehicle for every team to get into the playoff. That doesn't mean that every team is playing an equal schedule. It doesn't mean every team will have the equal chance, whatever it is, 136 divided by 12% chance to get into the playoff. But every team has to have a path. Otherwise, to me, a championship is invalid. You can't count wins against them and then say, well, we don't want you in our playoff because you're not good enough. So, yeah, I mean, I'm for it. I've lived it. I lived FCS playoff days. It's exciting. It's so much fun to be a part of. And I know guys like Josh and guys like you think about this in the abstract because you haven't seen it yet. You're predicting what it might look like, what it might do to the sport. And I can tell you from experience, FCS football was just fine with a 16-team playoff. It was just fine with 16. And the playoffs were great with 16. And I, as a fan, loved every single game that my team played for all 4 years that I was in school. So in the parlance of this clip here we're going to play from Mike Greenberg here in a few minutes, miss me with the argument that it makes the regular season meaningless. It's only meaningless to you because you have decided that it means less to you. See, every person's got to make that decision for themselves. Is this sport meaningful to me or not?
Here's the difference, though. In your 16-team playoff, the big bad bully of college football did not get to flex and say, we get 5 auto bids. You know what I mean? Our 7-5 is better than your 11-1. And then Penn State, you know as well as I do, Penn State was the picture of the team that everybody knew wasn't the national champion. They played nobody. Then when they played somebody, they lost. every single time they lost.
Well, so again, this is a piece of the audio that I don't know if it's included in this clip that you have here, but Josh Pate went off on the people who argue that, well, Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be in the playoff because they don't play anybody all year long. Well, that's you who have decided they don't play anybody. That's you who have decided that their schedule is trash. Those other teams across from them are trying like hell to beat them. And it doesn't mean that Notre Dame is in the top 5 programs in college football, or doesn't mean that it's in the top 5 in quality of team, which is an incredibly subjective conversation, right? Yep. Like, we don't ever look at this through the lens of analytics and say, what skill level do you have on your team? How do you perform relative to the competition that you face? Everybody just wants to go off of opinion and the eye test. We've made the eye test way too damn important. See, I don't like any conference getting X number of auto bids.
I hate that.
Because what if, and you know as well as I do, this sport is cyclical. It's a pendulum. There was a time where all the power was in the SEC East. It was Florida. It was Tennessee. And then it swung to the West. And people said, oh, no, the East is never going to win another title in the SEC again. Woe is us. We've got to change the system so that the East has a chance. And then look what's happening. Maybe the pendulum is swinging back towards the East. Georgia's winning national titles. Nick Saban is retiring. All of this comes back and forth in due time. But everybody's trying to pull the Jurassic Park. Everybody is trying to engineer the dinosaurs so that they're all girls and that they can't procreate. But what did we learn from that movie?
I know what you're going to say.
Life finds a way. Life finds a way. So you got all these people, some of them bad actors in business suits who are just trying to make money here, but so many people just want to tinker with the sport to make it exactly what they want it to be year in and year out. You want to tinker with it. You want to engineer the perfect playoff scenario. You want to make sure that nobody ever gets blown out in the playoffs. You want to make sure that the team that passes your personal eye test wins the thing so you get to feel good about yourself and say, look at me, I picked the winner. But guess what? It never, ever, ever turns out that way. So stop trying, because all you're doing is screwing things up more and more and more.
You know, I want to do something right now, guys, that we don't normally do, okay? And that is that, you know, when we play for you an audio clips are generally 10 to 30-second blurbs, okay? Josh Pate is the host of the best college football show in the country. You heard that the other day when he joined us on the show. We said that. And this rant that he has is so good. And, you know, Josh typically tends to be pretty anti-hot take. This is as close to a hot take as I've heard Josh Pate have. It's so good that I couldn't stop listening to it. And it's so good that I didn't dare break it up into multiple audio bits to share with you. So if you'd like to hear some great audio, Josh Pate, as plugged in as anybody to what's really going on in college football, explain to you why the powers that be continue to expand our postseason at a breakneck pace. Here is our friend Josh.
A bunch of people who really didn't care about college football so much, they more cared about deepening their pockets. A bunch of people came along and they saw college football. And college football was really, really good. But it was good for fans. It wasn't necessarily fully leveraged from a profit maximization standpoint. And they realized, well, we could make a whole lot more money on this thing. And so being absent of central leadership, no one stopped them. They just walked in the door and they built themselves an ATM, but they called it a playoff. See, they built the ATM so it would print money, but they didn't call it an ATM. They called it a college football playoff. Part two came when they gaslit everyone into thinking it was needed. And they would point things out like 2004. That's an imperfect season. We had an undefeated team be left out. How could we ever continue this sport? Lack of a playoffs, an existential threat. And they talked about the betterment of the game, the best interest of college football. They talked about the best interest of a sport they couldn't care less about. They cared about leveraging it. They didn't care about the sport itself. And then when the playoff comes around, The next order of business was they used mass marketing to redefine what meaning actually was. Once upon a time, meaning was, I'm waking up on Saturday and my team's playing your team and it's college football. It's great. But all of a sudden, that wasn't good enough anymore. What worked for a million years wasn't good enough. All of a sudden, it's about who's in. Remember that marketing campaign? It got thrown in your face. It got sprayed in your face like a fire hose. Every single waking hour of every day that you watched programming, it was about who's in the playoff. That's what meaning is, after all. If you're playing a game in early November and you're out of the playoff race, that's a meaningless game. Only in about the past decade have we started to popularize phrases like meaningless game in college football. You ever wonder why that's only popped up in the last decade? You ever wonder why bowl opt-outs only really popped up in the last decade? It's not because the NFL all of a sudden started paying millions of dollars. Therefore, guys didn't want to risk their draft status. NFL was paying big money in 2005, just as much as they were in 2015. The difference is the adults in the room told the kids on the field, it's not a playoff game, it's meaningless. And how dare those kids? They listened to the adults. They get accused of not doing it all the time. They listened to the adults. And so then all of a sudden, you realize you got a problem. And the same group that had the flamethrower in their hand and set the forest on fire put the flamethrower down. And then they went and bought a fire truck and drove it right up and had the audacity to tell you, we're here to put out the fire. We need to expand the playoff more because that's how games will get meaning. Now, games had meaning forever before that crowd came along. But then all of a sudden, the games don't have meaning anymore. Why are these games not meaningful in November? Well, I know. We'll create more of what caused the problem. And lo and behold, people went along with it again. And folks like me who pushed back on it were called Neanderthals, knuckle draggers. Like, how can you resist change? How could you say no to more football, Josh? Now we sit here and the same crowd that brought you from 2 to 4 and now from 4 to 12, and maybe we never have 12 because we may go to 14 or 16, they're telling you, don't worry, this will address the problem. The games will have meaning now. The games had meaning. The games had meaning. It's just that a bunch of dudes in suits came along and they convinced you that access to a playoff was like college football's version of oxygen. And if you don't have access to that, if you're not in the chase for the playoff, your games have no meaning. That playoff was built by men. That playoff was created very recently. The things that make college football great have been around decades and decades and decades. And you could call it man-made, but really it was created by culture. It was created by years and years and years of doing something and enjoying something and sharing something communally. And then it saddens me that you let a group of clowns come in wearing suits, so you know they must be legit, and we just allowed them to redefine it. That's kind of the sad part. So if you want to know why I push back on expansion, if you want to know why I hardlined my stance at the outset, if you want to know why I didn't want to compromise and just give a little, it's because there was never giving a little. In this equation, there was either winning or you let go of the rope completely.
The words of my guy, Josh Pate, our guy, Josh Pate. And guys, he's right. The only thing that changed is perception. Perception is a bunch of people coalesced on social media and said, these games don't mean anything. Nobody ever said that. Nobody ever said that. There has been no difference in the delineation of meaning between bowl games of yesterday and bowl games today. When I was 12 and 13 years old living in Fort Collins, Colorado, Colorado State made a bowl game for the first time in 36 years. They played Oregon in the Holiday Bowl and they beat them. And the entire city of Fort Collins, Colorado was buzzing. Front page of the newspaper. Everyone was talking about it with their neighbors. Everyone had their green and gold flags out. You think that game was meaningless? Well, today, there's a lot of folks that would tell you, why should Colorado State's projected third-round pick tight end even play in the game? That is meaningless. It is nothing more than perception and a bunch of morons having the ability to coalesce on social media and scream BS from the mountaintops. On that point, Josh is completely and totally right. That diesel may have been my favorite Josh Pate rant of all time.
The question is, why, if ESPN is watching the ratings and the ticket sales for these bowl games go down, And ESPN holds the rights to a lot of these bowl games, so they could be front runners in this. Why isn't ESPN attempting to counteract all of this negative perception around bowl games being meaningless? Where is ESPN running ad campaigns at us with the same fervor, as Josh put it, by blasting people in the face with a fire hose about the meaning of bowl games? Where is that? It's because ESPN doesn't really want to do the bowl games anymore. ESPN doesn't want to pay for these things. ESPN doesn't want to promote these things. They are allowing bowl games to rot on the vine so that they can push and push and push for an expanded playoff. Why would ESPN want to pay for the Camellia Bowl anymore when they don't have to? Sorry, teams that play in the Camellia Bowl, you had a great year. Good for you, but we don't have a bowl game for you anymore. Why isn't ESPN blasting out to the world that these things do have meaning? It's just counter propaganda. Propaganda won. The propaganda that told you these games were meaningless won. You guys bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. So where is ESPN, who owns these games? And for as long as they're going to put them on, they should be promoting the fact that they have meaning.
So, guys, when we come back on the show, all right, there is the reason for the why that Diesel just said. Why is ESPN not promoting the meaning of bowl games? It's about greed, and I'll tell you the specifics as to the why there. And there are, in fact, believe it or not, ESPN personalities that are lamenting the loss of the value of bowl games, even though their company, their parent company, is, along with Fox, largely behind it. We'll get to that next, right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Check on the text line. Texter says, can't say Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be considered when it was Clemson's signature regular season win last year. What does that have to do with anything? Texter says, I'm good with expansion, but I just want to see the top 12 making it in. If your end of season ranking is in the top 12, you're in. Even if that means you have 6 teams from one conference and no one from the ACC or the Pac-12 gets in, let the top 12 battle it out for the chip. Well, here's the thing that's interesting about that, Texter. For our entire lives, okay, you would never see a team that is 9-3 ahead of a team that is 11-1 from a major conference, okay, because the poll voters said that is not what's deserved. Even if Vegas told you the 9-3 team would be favored, they don't care. It's not what's deserved. So you're saying, well, just put in the top 12. And I agree with you, so long as they keep to what they've always been doing. If we get back into this, automatic bids BS, and the SEC gets 4 every year, you're going to have some 8-4 teams get in. It's going to suck.
Well, it would have to be based, the top 12 ranking system would have to be based on analytics. You couldn't let the human element into this, because then anyone could be convinced, and it's not a difficult argument to convince somebody of, that the SEC is a better conference and that the 3rd or 4th best team in the SEC is better than the 2nd best team in the ACC, for example. I mean, that's not a difficult argument to convince someone of. So then if you've got a whole room full of people who believe that, then the minutia is just going to keep pushing more and more and more and more towards the SEC or the Big Ten or whoever it is at the top of the heap at the moment. So it has to be based on like an old BCS formula. How are you statistically?
So, guys, the answer to Diesel's question, in my opinion, why isn't the ESPN advocating for the value of bowl games, having a commercial campaign promoting the value of bowl games? And the reason is, as they continue to build up this college football playoff, the powers that be in college football know that one network is going to win the rights to that. And so you're continuing to drum up the demand from the networks for what is going to be a massive tournament. And increasingly, college football is going to become a postseason sport. And man, oh man, guess what? If you ESPN or you Fox win the bidding for the college football playoff, and it has nothing to do with anything but the amount that you offer. It has nothing to do about friendships. It is, if you offer $332 billion and they offer $331 billion, the $332 billion wins. That's how television bidding goes for these properties. ESPN and Fox are not bitching and moaning about this because they're aware that they're going to have a chance to monopolize the sports. And so, hey, bowl games, sorry, you're caught in the crossfire. Okay, you're not going to stand in the way of us claiming the lion's share of the college football playoff. So what happens then? All you hear about is the college football playoff. All that matters is the college football playoff. We're going to have seasons, guys, where Florida and South Carolina fans are checked out before October. Okay, before October. We're going to have seasons where that's the case. And it's because everyone convinced you that everything else is meaningless and the only thing that matters now is the college football playoff. Texter says, Mark, let's just make a 64-team March Madness style tournament. App State would get in every year. Right, Diesel? Texter, why do you insist on taking years off of my life with stuff like this? Please. Why do you insist? Texter says, do away with no playoff bowls since we are headed to the NFL model and there are no non-playoff games. Do away with the Strawberry Pop-Tarts Bowl. As fun as that was, Texter, it feels like bowl games are going away anyway. You know why they're still here? It's not that people attend them. It's that networks need programming. And networks know that you're going to be bored and perhaps sick of the cousin that you don't like and looking for an escape over the holidays. And what do you know? There's the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and it made me laugh. And I'll watch a quarter of that because there's not much else that's going to grab your attention at that time. So, guys, like, why isn't ESPN doing more? Well, some ESPN personalities have spoken up about this. Players leaving, players transferring, players not participating in their team's bowl game. Here was Kirk Herbstreit just last offseason on this very topic.
Like, what's the difference as a player in saying these games are meaningless when, Des, we played in quote-unquote meaningless games? I mean, I know you guys were here a lot, but I just don't understand. If you don't make it to the playoff, how is it meaningless to play football and compete? Isn't that what we do as football players? We compete. So I don't know if changing and expanding it is going to change anything. I really don't. I think this era of player just doesn't love football.
That's what I was about to say. We're dealing with a total different mentality when we're dealing with these student athletes nowadays, especially the football players. I mean, their whole mentality right now is about the championship, the playoff. We got to get into the CFB or the CFP. And because of that, they don't value the bowl games. Now, when we were coming up, Herbstreit and myself, like, to go to a bowl game was a huge reward for a fantastic season. That's what it meant. It's like, okay, your team played this well, so you're going to be rewarded by going to this bowl game. You're going to get a ring. You're going to get swag. Now, kids don't really care about that. They have a sense of entitlement. And it's like, if we're not going to the one that matters, then, it just doesn't have as much value to them as it did us growing up.
Yeah, the words of Kirk Herbstreit and Desmond Howard. And yet there is their network telling college football, hey, man, if you can imagine what we bid for a 14 playoff, we know you know that. Here's what we bid for a 12. Here's what we would bid for a 16. And so there's talk of expansion only because they're seeing the dollar signs of what the networks will bid. And the networks will bid that because increasingly they would then have a monopoly over what has become the second most popular sport in America. The NFL had 93 of the top 100 rated broadcasts of the year. Television broadcasts of any kind, sports and non-sports. Okay, the NFL had 93 of the top 100. The only other sport with any, college football, with 3 of the top 100 rated television broadcasts. I think the Academy Awards had 1. Super Bowl pregame show, that's another football show, had 1. Thanksgiving Day parade had 1. Political programming had 1. That's it. That's it. That's all that you got. So, my friends, as you digest this and as you listen to Josh Payton, as you hear the people that don't even love college football are at the controls and they're making a money grab that is largely ruining the sports, how do you digest that? Up next, Mike Greenberg presents a different viewpoint. That's next here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Fantastic to have you guys in today on the show. Truly do appreciate you, man. Okay. So Mike Greenberg is a host I really, really like, man. I'm really down with some Mike Greenberg. He is smart. He is interesting. He is funny. What we have seen, you remember Mike and Mike back in the day? Here's the cold hard fact about what we've learned. Mike Greenberg is perfectly capable of standing on his own. Mike Golick could only thrive with Mike Greenberg. Have we not seen that? You know, like Mike Greenberg made Mike Golick funny. Like that dynamic worked. You had the jock and the nerd working together, and like that played. That was good. Mike Greenberg has been fine by himself, like thrived by himself. And so like in the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, who was really more responsible for the other success, Tom Brady won that one. Mike Greenberg wins this one. There was a report that like they were at odds and they couldn't stand working with each other anymore. And that's why they made the change. Also, you guys probably know that's why Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless don't work together anymore. That like evidently Shannon could not stand working with Skip Bayless for another day.
Every time they were on the show together, I thought Shannon was going to take swings at him.
Yeah, right. So,
and anyway, I think Skip knew that, and he was trying to edge up to it as much as he could.
I gotta tell you guys a quick story, real quick, Diesel. Okay. So my first radio gig was in Orlando, and I bought my own show, and I was on ESPN Radio, and I utilized, Diesel, the fact that I had a brokered show. Can you describe to the audience what a brokered show means, Diesel? What does that mean?
I don't know.
Brokered show is one you pay for. Okay. So I was paying to be on the air, and it's when I was starting my career. And I was like, okay, but nobody at ESPN needs to know I have a brokered show, right? So what I did was I just started emailing everyone at ESPN. And I said, hey, I'm on ESPN 1080, the team in Orlando, Florida. I don't have to tell you that I'm paying for my show. I don't have to tell you that I'm not really employed here. I just host a show for ESPN 1080, the team. And so I emailed Mike Greenberg. And I said, Mike, I'd love to have you on. And he's like, I'd be happy to come on. Super nice guy. So we had him on. And my dad had heard enough of my interviews to know that I needed help. You know, like I was like really green, and he's coming on. And Diesel, my dad had just moments of brilliance in the terms of the questions that he had for me for Mike Greenberg. You know, they were awesome. It was like, Who are the Cleveland Browns going to take in the draft, and how long will it take them to ruin them? You know, in a movie about Manny being Manny, who plays Manny? And it was all like just really interesting stuff. And like Mike Greenberg was laughing the whole time. And my dad gave me 3 or 4 of those questions. And Greenberg couldn't have been more gracious. Responded to me after the interview. Wish you the best of luck, Mark. Super good guy. I have nothing but really positive opinions of Mike Greenberg. I say that to say I don't know that I necessarily agree with him here, because Mike Greenberg today says, miss me with a no continuity argument from coaches.
When it comes to the coaches who are complaining that they can't keep their rosters together, I don't know that I can put it any more clearly than this. I have zero interest in hearing from them. Let me give you a statistic. In 2018, 21 college football coaches were hired at the Division I level, 21 of them. Do you know how many of those remain today at the school where they were hired? 1. Now, some of them were fired, but most of them were not. Most of them moved on to better opportunities because that's what they've been allowed to do forever. So you can miss me with the idea that, oh, these players, they have no loyalty and they're not staying with the programs and all that stuff. Until the day that the coaches honor their contracts, I'm not the least bit interested in hearing about how this is making their lives more complicated.
Okay, so on the surface, right, Mike Greenberg has a point. Why should coaches be able to move around and players not? We can all agree, though, right? There's a point of water pressure in which the levee breaks. We're there. Coaches should have never been able to leave their teams overnight. The scene last year where like Brian Kelly is leaving Notre Dame at 3 a.m. under the cloud of darkness to go to Baton Rouge, that should never bleeping happen. Never. The coach, the contract should always tie you through the end of the year. And just like there are periods where you can utilize the transfer portal, recruiting windows, there should be coaching hiring windows as well. Okay? So Mike Greenberg is saying, well, essentially, since coaches were guilty of wrongs, players should be able to be guilty of wrongs as well. And I would point you to the whole 2 wrongs don't make a right statement that your mom told you your whole life. Coaches should have never been able to do this. And then when you have coaches doing it, combined with players doing it, NIL transfer portal, I believe it was Lane Kiffin a few weeks ago, or no, it was Maryland's head coach said he had a 3rd-string running back demand $100,000 in order to stay here. And he essentially implied, Diesel, that he had to control from laughing in the guy's face. $100,000, man, or I'm out. You know, Diesel, I respect Mike Greenberg a lot. I really, really do. But all of it is bad. And when you have players leaving early and coaches leaving early, and you throw all those in a BS soup, what you have is the mess today in college football. And no continuity means declining ratings, means unhappy fans, mean a team means your team is not one you recognize anymore.
Well, it's certainly not right that any coach could do their best 84 Colts and just leave in the middle of the night. It's not right. You know, players sign up to play for coaches. They don't necessarily sign up to play for the university. They sign up to play for their coaches. I believe coaches should have a requirement of fulfilling at least 75% of their initial contract. If you don't fulfill 75% of that contract, if it's a 4-year deal, you have to be there for 3 years, or you have to give some part of that back in penalty, or you forfeit your buyout if you were to be fired, something like that. But you know where this is going to have to go. And every time we bring up something like this, you know, people in the audience, they just want to take the simple answer. Why don't we just turn the clock back and do this? You can't. You know, it's that old adage. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So what are we going to have to do with this? We're going to have to make players employees of the university. You're going to have to sign players to contracts, whether that be a 2-year contract or a 4-year contract. Now, the player will have to make that decision. If it's an elite, let's say a 5-star quarterback, he's going to go play at Southern Cal. He's going to have to make that decision. Would I rather be on a 2-year contract where 2 years from now I can leave as a free agent and go where I want to go? Or Would I rather have the guarantee of more money, more access, more whatever it is, and sign up for 4 years? That's where we're going to have to go with it. Like, coaches are not going to all of a sudden say, you know what? You're right. Please restrict my freedom of movement. They're not going to do that. So what do you have to do? You have to re-restrict player movement under the format of contracts. And they will get something for that. They will get more money, more whatever, more NIL deals as compensation for giving up that freedom of movement.
But it's also fair if players have restrictions on freedom of movement, if coaches do the same. And it's not just guys leaving under the cloud of darkness. It's what Sean Elliott did to his team. They've started spring practice
3 days in.
3 days into spring practice, and now they have no spring game. Now they have no spring practice. I mean, you talk about screwing over somebody. You know what I mean? You're like, guys, like it's always been important to me to do things the right way, right? And like, do you think Sean Elliott, like, what do you think of Sean Elliott's character if you're a Gamecock fan, that he like leaves for a tight ends position coach job 3 days into spring training? What do you think of his character? Or is it just like, well, it's good for my team, so I'm good? You know, like, would you not raise an eyebrow if somebody did that to you? Right? 3 days into spring practice? Would that not bother you? Because it would most certainly bother me. Texter says, Mark, I completely forgot about Mike Golick. Mike and Mike was great, though. That was a fantastic show, wasn't it?
Yeah, we saw so much more Golick Jr. after that show split up.
Yeah, Golick Jr. comes at me, Diesel, about 3 times a year. You know, I don't know why, but he's never agreed with me.
Hey, it's good to be on that guy's radar, even if it's negatively.
He never agrees with me. Texter says, I agree with the Greenberg sentiment, but coaches are employees and can be fired. And until they change the NIL portal rules, players are not considered employees. Oh, that's true. That's true. But should coaches be able to leave as well? I mean, Greeny's point is essentially what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Why can't players have freedom to move if coaches do the same? And our point is that's never been right. It's never been right to do what Sean Elliott did or Brian Kelly did. That's always been a horrible screw job, you know, and it's revealing of the character of those who do it, quite honestly. You know who did it the right way? Kalen DeBoer. He did it the right way. Don't talk to me. I'm not talking to anybody. I've got a historic season going on at Washington. I'm not going to mess with that, okay? If you want to talk to me about anything, do not engage in any conversation with my agent or I until the full season is done, culminating with our finish in the college football playoff. That's how you do it the right way, okay? Like, not screwing your team or peace out. I don't feel like being a head coach anymore, and now's the time I'm going to do it. Like Sean Elliott should have made that decision when the season was over, not when the new campaign has begun. Did he just wake up one day, I don't feel like doing this anymore, let me take the first position coach job that comes available? Is anyone actually holding these guys accountable? Or when Sean Elliott goes to Columbia for his introductory press conference, is it just softball homer questions from the local media? Hey, man, how come you screwed over your team? Sean, you really screwed over your team. Do you think any of the Columbia media asked him that?
I'd be willing to bet, it hasn't happened yet, but I'd be willing to bet that at least one player comes over from Georgia State. At least one. Because we know South Carolina will take transfers from any, group of 5 FCS program. They do it. It's not a hack job on South Carolina. If it's a player that fits your needs, fine. But I'm pretty sure we'll see Sean Elliott screw Georgia State over one more time by taking a player with him. At least one.
Texter says, Mark, it's the school's fault for letting coaches leave without penalty or non-compete clauses. Why are those not in there? Because then you don't get the best coaches. So, guys, one of my favorite radio memories, I was on air in Houston, and the Houston Board of Regents for the Houston Cougars, now in the Big 12, they hired Major Applewhite, who I called Major Apple wrong, right, as their head coach. And I was beside myself. Why? Because Lane Kiffin really wanted that job. Now, this was 2017. but I had a much better feeling about Lane Kiffin as a head coach than I did Major. Can you imagine today, Diesel hiring Major Applewhite over Lane Kiffin? And I got on the show, and it was like 7:01 p.m., and I am blistering the University of Houston in Houston for their hire. The owner of the Houston Rockets, who's the president of the Board of Regents, Tillman Fertitta, he is Houston's Mark Cuban, called in because he heard me lighting his hire on fire. And I'll never forget this. The producer looks at me, Diesel, and he goes, Mark. And he's like mouthing to me like you and I do sometimes. And he got his hair on his head. He goes, Tillman Fertitta's on the line. And I said, put him on. He goes, no. And I said, why? And we're like doing this and pressing the cough button in between our segment. He goes, because he's cursing. And I said, bring him on. And the first thing the guy says, Diesel, is, how lucky am I that I'm driving through Houston and what I hear is you bashing my hire? And we had such a revealing 10-minute conversation in which he told me that Lane Kiffin told him, Diesel, you can put any non-compete, any buyout in the contract. I want to be there. Put a $50 million buyout in the contract. Put a non-compete anywhere. And I said, Tillman, that wasn't enough for you? That wasn't enough? Well, he's got a little bit of a reputation, and Major Applewhite has great relationships in the community and all this stuff. Bro, you passed up Lane Kiffin for Major Applewhite.
We should try to get him back on the show.
Yeah.
Say, hey, 10 years later,
that'd be great.
how you feeling about that decision?
Yeah. Let's talk about that one. By the way, didn't they just fired Dana Holgerson too? You know, so they've just been, gosh, laundry list. All right, my friends, we've got Heisman Trophy voter Brent Beard coming your way next, right here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. What's good, my friends? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 o'clock p.m. today. Thrilled to have you guys with us. Could not do it without you. Joined right now by Heisman Trophy voter Brent Beard, First Coast News in Jacksonville, on Twitter at Brent Beard. Brent, you follow the Alabama program very, very closely. Eli Gold not renewed, steps aside. He's got other jobs immediately. Nick Saban has emphasized he wants to be a voice for change in college football despite retiring from coaching. And I thought these quotes were interesting. He said, let's see, you hear somebody use the word student athlete today. That actually doesn't exist. I want to see the players have a great quality of life and be able to create value for themselves. But we've gone to nobody talking about education, nobody talking about creating value for their future, to talking only about how much money can I make while I'm in college. He would know that very, very, very well. What kind of role, Brent, do you see Nick Saban being really able to cause positive change?
It will be a lot more than what he was going to be doing in game day. That doesn't mean that he can't bring out some important points. I don't think he would ever want to get a title necessarily, but I do think he values the game. The game means a lot to him, and he's not happy in the direction that it's going. And I think he could lend some real advice to the powers to be. And I think he's earned the right to be heard. And remember, guys, his last year or so, or maybe even more, he was asked a lot of not just football questions, but what would you do for the good of the game, and what should we change, and what is going on that you can help us with. So he was a bit of a spokesman, I believe, for college football toward the last few years as a lot of the interviews went from talking about the team to what will be good for the game. And I don't know if he just wanted to sit on committees necessarily, but I think he could certainly give sage advice. Look, what the thing that you just said, Mark, is really what he used in his recruiting pitches, talking about the value of education, about players creating the value for their own future. And now the thing they want to talk about is basically, well, how much NIL money can you get? And he understands that. He understands that's a part of the game. But what I don't think he likes is how it's taken the game over virtually.
Brent, do you believe that Nick Saban, in a position of power where he can affect change, would attempt to implement change that would benefit everyone equally? Because you and I both know that change disproportionately benefits the haves. It always has.
Sure.
So where do you see Nick Saban's minutia heading, benefiting the big conferences or benefiting everybody?
Well, it's interesting you said that. I did a podcast today, and that was part of the podcast. And the person that I did the podcast with on Travis Ryer is a senior analyst for Bama Online, and he even brought up that point. He thought Saban would be even more valuable, maybe for everyone, including the non-Power Five, and that he could be a real help for them, in his opinion. So I will say, again, I go back to this thing to where he grew up and realized, he's told this story many times. He worked at his father's gas station. And when he was there, he learned a lot about helping everyone and not just wiping windshields and putting in gas. And I think he's kind of taken that throughout. Now, look, he's not a miracle worker necessarily, but I really think that he could go and bring some real value and some real benefit, whatever he did with that. And not just the SEC and the Big Ten, even though we're seeing them separate from the rest of the pack right now.
Brent Beard, Heisman Trophy voter, First Coast News in Jacksonville, joining us here on Offsides. We are the Fan Upstate. Brent, I'd like to share with you a clip here from Mike Greenberg, ESPN radio host. And Mike, Brent says, I'm going to paraphrase this, but you're going to hear him, really criticize the coaches for complaining about a lack of continuity when they are also leaving. I want you to hear the clip, Brent. At the same time, I want to share with you my thoughts as soon as this is done. So here is Mike Greenberg.
When it comes to the coaches who are complaining that they can't keep their rosters together, I don't know that I can put it any more clearly than this. I have zero interest in hearing from them. Let me give you a statistic. In 2018, 21 college football coaches were hired at the Division I level, 21 of them. Do you know how many of those remain today at the school where they were hired? One. Now, some of them were fired, but most of them were not. Most of them moved on to better opportunities because that's what they've been allowed to do forever. So you can miss me with the idea that, these players, they have no loyalty and they're not staying with the programs and all that stuff. Until the day that the coaches honor their contracts, I'm not the least bit interested in hearing about how this is making their lives more complicated.
So the words of Mike Greenberg, Brenton, my take is simply this. I think what has really broken the levee here is that we have both the players and the coaches now leaving at a moment's notice. In my opinion, Brent, it was never right to do what Brian Kelly did to Notre Dame, leave under the cloud of darkness. It was never right to do what Sean Elliott just did to Georgia State, leave 3 days in to why did we never have windows of time like transfer portal windows where coaches could leave? The fact that they could leave whenever they want should have never been a thing. So where are you on the coaches have no reason to complain because they're the ones leaving as well?
Well, I mean, look, sometimes opportunities come up when you least expect it, and it may be you either go then or you don't get to go at all. I get that. I really do. There's certainly some logic to having a window of when they can leave. I don't think we'd ever have that because they would never allow that, I don't think. But there would be some value to that. If you add that, maybe what is happening at Georgia State wouldn't be happening to them and some other teams. And by the way, Dale McGee, the Georgia Rainbows coach, looks like he's going to be the head coach at Georgia State. But I don't know if we'll ever be able to solve this. As much money as there is, and the lure of the money, and the lure of the lily pad hopping, going up to the next job. But I think we don't see this much anymore. That's why I have so much respect for the guys who have been at a job. I mean, Saban folks didn't think Saban would be in Alabama 5 years. He was there 17. I mean, well, we're not going to have the Tom Osborne in Nebraska for 3 decades anymore, which is very unfortunate. So I don't know. I have mixed emotions about that. Frankly, I mean, I wish they didn't leave teams in a lurch the way that they did and the way that they do. But I also get the fact that, I mean, for whoever's listening right now, if you get your dream job dropped in your lap and you've got to make a move and it's not sometimes real good timing, I mean, I can understand that. And I can understand why some of these guys need to do it, but do I understand why they don't get a lot of sympathy with the money they make and how they come and go as they please? Yeah, I get that without any problem.
Brent, I certainly don't want it to come across like, I like reveling in any player's downfall. It's not a healthy lens to look at sports through. But, truth is, when it comes to the NFL draft, there are only 32 first-round draft picks every year, and not every player coming out of the draft or coming into the draft can be a first-round draft pick. Can you point to a player or two that you believe will fall below where they're projected, significantly below where they're projected? Maybe a guy that got a lot of hype coming out of college that you just don't think will do well in the draft.
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, with that, I mean, before the combines, what I want to say, I'm not sure. I'm sure there's some quarterbacks probably would be in that point. I mean, I'm just looking at some mock drafts here as far as what might happen with this. I mean, I do podcasts with a Michigan with some Michigan media, and they love J.J. McCarthy. But I wonder, guys, and I get your question, I really do. Will a guy like that? Some people love him, some people don't at all. And I'm just wondering if do you take a chance on him, knowing that maybe he doesn't have the stance that Jaden Daniels does from LSU, but yet that the guy is a winner. He's won a national championship. He's got a pretty good arm. He can tuck and run it when he needs to. I guess I'll use a guy like that as an example that in some eyes that he could go fairly high, but I mean, I still think if he goes, it may be I don't know, toward the end of the first, middle of the second, something like that. So I'll throw him out as an example of that.
Brent Beer joining us here on Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Brent, is the 12-team playoff the straw that finally gets the straw that stirs the drink to get Notre Dame to commit to a conference, considering that they could at best be a 5 seed, never having a bye? Do you think this is what does it?
I have heard that more this week than I've ever heard it, and I've talked to a Notre Dame beat writer and asked them the same question of, will they ever get in a conference? And the answer is no, not as long as they value their independence and as long as they can stay in the way that they are and use it to their advantage. But I think to your point, and if people haven't heard that, that's part of the problem with Notre Dame, is because they're not in a conference, because they're not going to win a conference, and the value that they put on conference champions, that Notre Dame's going to start at 5. I mean, let's be honest here. I don't know how many Notre Dame teams, if there are any, over the next few years that would be equivalent to the number 1 seed. So I'm not sure that it's going to matter that much, but I think and I'm hearing more and more of that. I still am going to have to see it to believe it, that they actually, with all the things could come into play right now where they actually would benefit more from being in the conference than they would being by themselves.
Brent, as somebody who was a student of a school that was FCS when I was there, I loved the 16-team playoff. Now, people who have never experienced a playoff structure like that, Mark Ryan's one of them, our good friend Josh Pate is one of them, look at this as doom and gloom, the sky is falling, oh my God, it's going to ruin the sport. Can you assuage some of those fears just a little bit and maybe counteract some of the arguments of this is going to ruin everything?
Oh, no. Look, the playoff is going to be a scapegoat. Frankly, the playoff, when it actually gets here, and we're moving into the month of November, is going to create more interest and more excitement, I think, than anything that we've seen in quite a while. And I've used this illustration often, that right now with the 14 playoff, you've got what, guys, 8 to 9 teams and fan bases who are on the edge of their seat in November. Now, when you've got 12, you've got 20 to 25. How in the world can that not add value and add interest to college football? And I'm with Diesel on this. I follow with interest on some of the other divisions and and how they do it and how that works. And they don't bat an eye. They do it every year. And frankly, it's tremendous. The college football playoff is not going to hurt college football as much as a transfer portal or NIL situation would. No, I don't buy that at all. I see a lot more positives than negatives of the playoffs.
Brent Beer joining us on the show. Brent, who is the next big college football name that's going to say enough of this mess, pull a Chip Kelly, and take a demotion or leave entirely? Or if it would be easier, who are some of the big name candidates that you think might say enough is enough?
I think you'd have to look at some of the older coaches and what that might do. I think if Chip Kelly had stayed at UCLA, we would probably be saying that might be him. And unfortunately, it's becoming a young man's game in a lot of ways. Would a James Franklin at Penn State maybe feel like, we've increased this league, we're adding more teams, competition is just ridiculous right now. how much longer could I go with this and be able to do it? I mean, listen, I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but when Kirby Smart and Nick Saban were on the podium for SEC Network, they were talking about Nick Saban being there 17 years. And Kirby Smart, just out of exasperation, said, there's no way that I'll be coaching for 17 years. So I think you're seeing more and more of that. And I'm hoping that guys like Saban can get this thing back kind of recentered more to where we've got less and less coaches who are leaving, because at the point we are now, guys, would I be wrong to say, I think, normally coaches leave in December, January. We've got this thing right now to where I would say we're on notice that any of these coaches could say, and Mac Brown comes to mind, also that even in the middle of the summer, I mean, guys, would the day come to where a coach in the middle of fall camp just comes up and says, "I've had enough and I'm walking away"? In this environment now, is that possible?
Very, very possible, my friend. Very, very possible. We will see if that's how it plays out. Brent Beard, great catching up with you. I will give you a call this weekend, sir. I will see what time's good for you, and let's catch up. Sound good?
Wonderful. Love it.
All right, buddy. Take care. Have a great one, okay?
Take care.
Brent Beard, Heisman Trophy voter, First Coast News in Jacksonville. Brent Beard, that's Beard is spelled Beaird. That's how Beard should always be spelled, my friends. Coming up next, I will give you A through F scenarios for Clemson and South Carolina football 2024. I'm Marquise Diesel. It's Offsides, the Fan Upstate.
It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel doing the show live on YouTube right now. If you're not in the stream, then jump on in. Put your waders on. Put your swimmies on. Jump on in. The stream is active. It's live on the Fan Upstate on YouTube. That's the Fan Upstate on YouTube. We're trying to grow this thing, trying to build this thing, and we can do it with you if you will just go to the YouTube channel, find us, the Fan Upstate, and hit subscribe.
It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. So what about A, B, C, D, and F scenarios for Clemson and South Carolina next year? What would be your A for Clemson? Your B, C, D, F for Clemson? How about South Carolina? My friends, we give you Clemson and South Carolina content in all different unique ways. How about it, my friends? Here we go. Clemson's A scenario. Making the Final Four. Not just making the CFP, making it down to the Final Four, which would mean you get a bye and you win a game. You're one of the 4 highest-ranked conference champions. Or you do not have a bye and you win a couple games in the college football playoff. Number 2, B. What would be a B grade for Clemson in 2024 to make the college football playoff? What would be a C grade to win the ACC championship but not make the college football playoff? I think that's going to be kind of impossible to do, honestly. To win the ACC but not make the CFP, it'd be one of those where you have a multiple loss or maybe a 3-loss champion. A D grade for
But
Clemson.
if you win it, you're automatically in.
Oh my God.
You win it, you're automatically
I'm not
in.
used to this, Diesel.
It's going to take you some time.
To this. We could have a 5-loss conference champion potentially. You're right. There is no winning the ACC and not making it. How about that? D grade would be a top 15 finish, but no ACC championship or college football playoff. And an F would be 3 or more losses for Clemson this year. So, yeah, guys, I'm saying that a 9-3 season again for Clemson would be an F. I'm tired of hearing Clemson fans, Diesel, rationalize not being what they were. Well, couldn't keep that level forever. Why not? Alabama did. Georgia did. Georgia is. Why not? Why couldn't you keep it forever? It's only fair to say if you have raised the bar to a certain point, the fan base does not want to see the bar fall again.
It's only fair to say that if your program architecting head coach is not there anymore, but he is there. If Dabo Swinney had left, then you can say, well, it's real difficult when you change regimes to keep up that level of quality. But you're not changing regimes. Your guy is still there. Your guy that every single one of you put all your faith and trust in, he's still there.
Next up, we've got South Carolina. How about this for the Gamecocks? What would be an A grade for the Gamecocks in 2024? How about 9 and 4? How about a B grade? I'm saying 8 and 5. So 9 and 4 would be you went 8 and 4 in the regular season and you won a bowl game. That'd be pretty damn impressive. Okay. Beamer has not yet done that. Number 2, B would be 8 and 5. You went 7 and 5 in the regular season. You won a bowl game. You went 8 and 4 in the regular season. You lost a bowl game. That gets you a B grade. C grade for the Gamecocks this year. I will go 7 and 6. Went 6 and 6, won a bowl game. Went 7 and 5, lost a bowl game. That is a C. Do we agree with that, my friends? D grade for the Gamecocks this year. I will go 6 and 7. Guys, you got to somehow finish with a winning record. Okay, this is year 4 for Shane Beamer. How much time do you need to produce a winner? And an F grade for me for the Gamecocks would be 5 wins or less. A through F grades. I'm giving them to you right now in February. Okay? And these are not going to change, and these are not going to budge for at any time during the offseason and any time during next season. Okay? These are not going to budge. What grade would Clemson have received for last season's performance? A D. What grade would South Carolina have received for last season's performance? Also a D. Last year was not a good year in the Palmetto State for college football. But A, B, C, D, F, I will be unwavering in this mission. I promise you that. Okay? I guarantee you that. Hey, we had the chance to sit down with a Super Bowl quarterback. You know him as Slash. His name is Cordell Stewart. Okay? You know him from his play with the Pittsburgh Steelers, played under Bill Cowher. And we thought, it would be pretty cool if we were able to share this recent sit-down from this week with you. And we'll do so next. By the way, we got the top 5 at 5. We've got Cole Bryson joining us at 5:20. Cole is about to explode on the South Carolina High School League. All that's still to come on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. Cordell Stewart chat next here on the Fan Upstate. weekend, right? Like this is the second one of these that we've had. What is your go-to this time of year? Is it time to get to the honey-do list, right? Because you put that off. Just time to begin spending time with the fam. I've been surprised this year at how much attention there's been on college basketball, but I get the why, right? It's the first time in a long time that folks here have had something great to cheer about, so it's like, man, it's like college basketball on the weekends here garners about half the engagement that college football does. That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. You get into college baseball now. What is your February weekend like post-sports, post-football season? Let us know on the text line 71307. Just start your text with the word fan and away you go. I'll tell you guys this. So like I have like numbers in my mind, and I bring Diesel into this as well, like numbers for like in terms of engagement, what is a good show during football season? And then those numbers for what is a good engagement show in non-football season are very, very different. You know what I mean? Very, very different. So let's just throw this out there randomly. I could give you a number like 10,000, and I could say, okay, 10,000 would be a great show engagement in football season. 5,000 would be a great show engagement in football off season. It is about half in this market, right? In this area. So I'm curious what you guys do during these weekends. And, I had somebody tell me the other day, he said, Mark, when you host in Greenville, South Carolina, this time of year, man, that is labor. That is labor. Like you're trying to connect with a college football audience when there is no college football. That is not easy to do. And I said, no, you're right. It's not easy to do. We kind of do a mix of different things here on Offsides. Like we don't cover a sport just because it's what's on right now. We try to do different things, try to capture our audience's attention, try to have some fun, and I like the blank canvas, man. I got to be honest with you. So what do you guys say? We've got Cole Bryson, who is fuming, joining us next at the South Carolina High School League, but it's time for us to do that jam. We call it the Top 5 at 5. The top 5 biggest sports stories of the day, the top 5 topics we're discussing. Ladies and gentlemen of the Upstates, Offsiders, the Top 5 at 5 starts right now.
And now, the Top 5 at 5.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hit it.
5.
At number 5 today, how about this, my friends? In 18 of the past 20 seasons, at least one club in the NFL has gone from worst to first, winning its division the season after finishing in last place. The Jacksonville Jaguars became the last team to do so in 2022, swiping the AFC South with a win in Week 18. So, my friends, here are the 8 last place teams from 2023. We've got the Natty. We've got Tennessee. You're the only 10 I see, baby. Los Angeles Chargers, Washington Commanders, Chicago Bears, Arizona Cardinals, Carolina Panthers, New England Patriots. Now, you might be one who says, well, this is the year it's not going to happen. Well, 90% of the last 20 seasons, you have been wrong. I'm going to roll, guys, with the Tennessee Titans. Cincinnati, I think, is an obvious pick. You get Joe Burrow back. They were 9-8 without him. Los Angeles Chargers would seem to be a popular pick because they now have Jim Harbaugh. But I look at the AFC South. I think Indianapolis could be worse because they're going to be breaking in a rookie quarterback, Anthony Richardson. I think Houston, C.J. Stroud, boy, they are tough, but it's hard. It's harder to do it when everyone's got the playbook on you, right? Jacksonville continues to disappoint. I kind of like what I saw from Will Levis last year. I kind of like Tennessee's hire at head coach. Give me Tennessee to be the team that goes from worst to first next year. What is your pick for that? Let us know. Next up.
4.
All right, my friends, at number 4. A, B, C, D, and F scenarios on the text line today for Clemson and South Carolina football 2024. Billy and Greer, good to hear from you, Billy. He says, Mark, as a South Carolina fan, I think this is a rational and fair expectation of South Carolina football. That's all we can ask. We're going to give you A, B, C, D, and F grades for the results, and these are not going to change. All right? A grade. Clemson makes the Final Four. Diesel, agree or disagree? A grade, Final Four. Better or worse than that? Would get an A.
I think that's fair. I think an A grade, you have to maintain the high standards in Clemson. Yeah, I was trying to think, like, how can I cut them a little bit of slack without lowering standards? And like, well, you can't. Cutting them slack is lowering the standard.
B would be to make the college football playoff. That's just being one of the top 12 teams.
Yeah, so they would either have to win the ACC or they would have to be good enough as an at-large and lose the ACC championship game. I think if you don't make it, then you're not gonna sniff the top 12.
Diesel, you have nailed the fallacy in my grading system. There is no C, because I had a C being the ACC championship, and you immediately reminded me I'm going to have to get used to this, that means you're now in the college football playoff, no matter how many losses you have. So there is no C grade for Clemson this year. There is no, we had an okay season, okay? A D grade is a top 15 finish, but no ACC championship or no college football playoff. And an F is 3 or more losses, Diesel. There is absolutely no reason why with that team, even with Georgia on the schedule, you should drop 3 games next year.
Yeah, 3 is a little stiff. I'd go 4. I could see the reasoning for 3, but I would go 4.
Wow. Maybe your standards have dipped, sir. maybe yours have. South Carolina, A, B, C, D, F. A for the Gamecocks is 9-4. That means you went 8-4 in the regular season, won a bowl game. B is 8-5. You went 8-4 and lost a bowl game, or 7-5 and won a bowl game. C grade is 7-6. Come on, man. That's not success. This is year 4 for Beamer. Okay? You went 7-5, lost a bowl game. You went 6-6, won a bowl game. That's a C grade. A D grade is a losing record. If you got a losing record in year 4, people have got questions about you. And an F grade for the Gamecocks this coming season is 5 wins or less. Guys, this is very straightforward, right? This is easy to understand. Is it not? This makes a lot of sense. Do you like my grading scale? Or have I swung and missed? Let us know your thoughts on the text line 71307. Just start your text with the word fan and away you go on the show. Next up.
3.
At number 3. You know, we are good friends on this show with our best buddy, Josh Pate, 24/7 Sports, the Late Kick Show. Josh Pate went on perhaps the best rant that I've heard him opine on today. And it was all about how college football is being ruined, and it's being ruined by suits, people wearing suits that don't actually care about college football. You know, they come in, they throw their weight around, they negotiate TV deals, and they damage the sport in the process. Listen to some of this rant here from Josh Pate, in my opinion, one of his best.
A bunch of people who really didn't care about college football so much, they more cared about deepening their pockets. A bunch of people came along and they saw college football. And college football was really, really good. But it was good for fans. It wasn't necessarily fully leveraged from a profit maximization standpoint. And they realized, well, we could make a whole lot more money on this thing. And so being absent of central leadership, no one stopped them. They just walked in the door and they built themselves an ATM, but they called it a playoff. See, they built the ATM so it would print money, but they didn't call it an ATM. They called it a college football playoff. Part 2 came when they gaslit everyone into thinking it was needed. And they would point things out like 2004. That's an imperfect season. We had an undefeated team be left out. How could we ever continue this sport? Lack of a playoffs, an existential threat. And they talked about the betterment of the game, the best interest of college football. They talked about the best interest of a sport they couldn't care less about. They cared about leveraging it. They didn't care about the sport itself. And then when the playoff comes around, the next order of business was they used mass marketing to redefine what meaning actually was. Once upon a time, meaning was I'm waking up on Saturday and my team's playing your team and it's college football. It's great. But all of a sudden, that wasn't good enough anymore. What worked for a million years wasn't good enough. All of a sudden, it's about who's in. Remember that marketing campaign? It got thrown in your face. It got sprayed in your face like a fire hose every single waking hour of every.
The words of our guy, Josh Pate, on what's going on in college football. He's saying the suits have created this. And because they can't get out of their own way and now can't solve the problem, they're going to compound the problem by just continuing to screw it up and add more teams to the college football playoff. You know, guys, nothing changed in terms of bowl games. Nothing changed in terms of what they mean other than perception, right? And the college football playoff helped to derail that. Them's the facts. Next up.
2.
You know, I like to have an even mix of positive and negative on the show, and today I think I'm failing because I'm just reading a bunch of things that are pissing me off. A federal judge in Tennessee granted a preliminary injunction on Friday afternoon that prohibits the NCAA from punishing any athletes or boosters for negotiating name, image, and likeness deals during their recruiting process or while they are in the transfer portal. The judge's decision will likely have an immediate and dramatic impact on how NIL deals are used in the recruiting process. The NCAA's prohibition likely violates federal antitrust law and harms student athletes. Give me a break. So what does this mean, Diesel? Now, when a student is on a recruiting visit, here's what we have for you financially if you come here.
Yeah.
Now, if a school's at another school, if a player's at another school and you're trying to poach him, here's what we can do for you financially if you were to leave your scholarship. This is precisely what Greg Sankey told me he needed the NCAA to enforce. You know, inducements are illegal. And now a judge says you can't do that. Well, how come all the judges are finding an issue with this now? How come? This was the way things always were. Is the only thing that didn't happen Ed O'Bannon didn't challenge them? You know, like now consistently, there's nothing college sports can do.
It's incredible how fast all of the institutions and rules within the NCAA have been systematically dismantled, one after the other, after the other, after the other. It's like the people who don't like the rules, they will take down a rule and say, okay, what's next? What can we take down next? What can we get expelled next? What can we break down next?
I think it stinks. I think it's awful. I think the more of these rulings that come in, please just give us employees with a collective bargaining agreement and contracts for these players to remain at their schools ASAP. And finally,
1.
Mike Greenberg says, I don't want to hear coaches complaining that they can't keep a team together. Not when you coaches have been doing this.
When it comes to the coaches who are complaining that they can't keep their rosters together, I don't know that I can put it any more clearly than this. I have zero interest in hearing from them. Let me give you a statistic. In 2018, 21 college football coaches were hired at the Division I level. 21 of them. Do you know how many of those remain today at the school where they were hired? 1. Now, some of them were fired, but most of them were not. Most of them moved on to better opportunities because that's what they've been allowed to do forever. So you can miss me with the idea that, oh, these players, they have no loyalty and they're not staying with the programs and all that stuff. Until the day that the coaches honor their contracts, I'm not the least bit interested in hearing about how this is making their lives more complicated.
Okay, Mike Greenberg, I heard you. Okay, you're right. But the problem is now with coaches leaving and players leaving, there's no continuity for anyone. And college football feels a hell of a lot like one and done college basketball. That's a problem. Coaches should have never been able to screw over their teams. Brian Kelly should have never been able to leave Notre Dame under the cloud of darkness. Sean Elliott should never be able to leave his team in spring. There should be coaching hiring windows, just like there's transfer portal windows, recruiting windows. so on and so forth, right? 2 wrongs don't make a right. So let's fix the coaching part first. What do you say? And those are today's top 5 at 5. Now it's your chance to chime in, which you can do at 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-FANFONE. That's 844-326-3663. The text line is there for you at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan and away you go. That phone number is brought to you by the Renewal by Anderson Fan Phone. You can get to us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube at The Fan Upstate on every one. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, and finally, email. You guys can all email the show. Mark Ryan, that is MARC Ryan, at thefanupstate.com. All the different ways you can get in touch with us here on the most interactive sports radio show anywhere. Let's quickly get to a couple of your texts. Texter says, Mark, Carolina will be worst to first in 2025. Texter says, post-football is spent catching up on the honey-do list. Good man, so says John Dog. Texter says, my wife left me a honey-do list on the fridge. I feel dirty, do me. Love the dishes. That's hilarious. I feel dirty, do me. Love the dishes.
I have about 5 projects. See, Ashley and I are great at starting projects. We're not great at finishing projects. So I've got about 5 projects. Remember when I came back from my honeymoon and we had a pipe burst and flood our bathroom and we had to dig up the flooring and install the new toilet and all this kind of stuff? That project's still not done.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
And it's just the finishing touches. This is what I'm talking. Like, we're an hour and a half from finishing that whole project, but it's been sitting there for 6 months, unfinished.
Diesel, you know what they say? Procrastination is like masturbation. It feels good until you realize you're screwing yourself.
Yeah, I look at it and say, well, this bathroom is functional enough.
Cut it out, Diesel. Cut it out. Hey, listen, Texter, with you and your wife and the honey-do list on the dishes, I'm feeling dirty, do me, love the dishes. Please finish the deal, okay? Please satisfy those dishes, all right? Texter says, Mark, non-football Sundays have me and the wife teaming up making homemade cheesecakes, all different flavors. Hokey Chris, where is my invite, sir? I will be right over. Where am I going?
Yeah, we reviewed Wrap Snacks on this show. We'll review your cheesecakes.
Absolutely, we will. Please make a delivery, please, sir. Okay, that would be outstanding. We've got Cole Bryson coming your way next. Cole is steamed at a change that the South Carolina High School League just made. Do they ever do anything right? It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate.
Stream, we appreciate you being here yet again for another week. I know it was kind of shortened, and we had Mark out on Wednesday for his Ingles show, but we appreciate you being here every single day that we're on nonetheless. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. If you're new here, awesome. Thanks for being here. We'll be back on Monday.
Take care, guys.